This entire half hour, we are focused on answering your coronavirus-related questions. And we start with a big update on Multnomah County's reopening process. We've learned it will apply for Phase 1 of Oregon's reopening plan on June 5th, with the goal of entering Phase 1 on June 12th. Our Pat Doris has been following this story all day. Pat, first off, Multnomah County is the only county in the state that has not applied to reopen so far. Why is it taking so long to get this process going, and what's the criteria here?
Well, it's interesting. They're being much more detailed than some of the other counties in the metro area. One of the big holdbacks is they don't have enough contact tracers yet. They have about half of what the government says, the state government says that they need. Now, the difference is that other counties, Clackamas and Washington, have applied for reopening anyway, with only about a third of the contact tracers. So Multnomah County is not going to do that, though. They say that in about 2 weeks, they expect to have the full number they need, which is about 120 people. So that's thing one. They are getting a green light and a check mark on everything else. PPE, they said that they have way more than 30 days. In fact, earlier today on a different meeting than a news conference, they said they have something like 110 days worth of PPE. They have hotel rooms. They have 120 hotel rooms. Only a handful of those are being used. 29, I believe, is the number. And so they're doing quite well on that. They need to have falling COVID-19 infection rates and falling numbers of people showing up at the hospitals with flu-like symptoms. So far, that is looking really good. So far, so good. So on a number of those metrics, they're getting green checks. The only one that's in doubt is the contact tracers.
Now, if Multnomah County does get approved to enter Phase 1, what does that mean for people and businesses here? What types of changes can we expect to see?
Well, it means that businesses like restaurants that have been shut down and can do takeout only can all of a sudden have customers come inside and start sitting down. It also means that personal care places like hair salons, barbershops, that sort of thing, they can reopen. All it has to be done with social distancing, of course, but they can at least start making a little bit of money. And gyms can reopen as well. So it unlocks the last vestige of the governor's lockdown.
I've touched on it here a little bit, but when those businesses start to reopen, what should people be doing at gyms and restaurants?
Well, they should keep their distance. The 6-foot distance is, kind of the gold standard. And they should also be thinking about wiping down surfaces that they're using. I go to LA Fitness, and even before all of this, when I and my friends were done on the treadmill or whatever, we'd wipe down the handles. Now, all that has to be done all of the time. And you should think about wearing a mask, too. You don't have to wear one when you're eating at a restaurant, but Dr. Jennifer Vines today was saying it's kind of becoming the social norm now, and the polite thing to do is to wear the mask so that your spittle is not infecting other people.
Now, looking ahead to this reopening process, what does Multnomah County need to do to enter Phase 2?
Well, so they've got to apply, and before they apply, they've got to get these contact tracers on board. So they have a bunch more to hire, and as they accomplish that, and if everything else stays in check and the numbers don't explode, they should be in pretty good shape.
There's so much to follow here, Pat. Thank you so much for filling us in with all of these answers.
My pleasure, Galen.
Now, before counties could even think about reopening in Oregon, the state said it had to hire a certain number of contact tracers. Here's how that works. Every time a person tests positive for COVID-19, their results get sent to the county health department. Contact tracers then, within 24 hours, call that infected person and ask them about their life over the last couple weeks, where they've been and who they've spent time with. Then, contact tracers call those people to warn them they may have been exposed. What's interesting, though, is the biggest counties in Oregon have applied and, in one case, reopened without hiring enough tracers. Multnomah County doesn't even have half its required total of 122. Instead, it told the state it has a plan to hire people, but it takes time. Maggie Vespa asked, with so many people out of work, how can that be?
It really is just getting the process moving, thinking about getting people phones and computers, getting them trained, getting them connected to our other staff. So it really is a process. It's not about the lack of qualified applicants.
And it's really important to have our community-based organizations supporting us, because a lot of folks are fearful of government and don't want to speak to public health. So that's the benefit of culturally appropriate, culturally bilingual folks that can reach out to some of these contacts for us on our behalf. So we'll be looking to put some of those contracts in place and have some of those underway.
Now, another story here. Religious services can begin again in Washington with some restrictions. So what are they? For areas in phase 2, like Cowlitz, Skamania, and Wahkiakum counties, they can start having indoor services. The governor is limiting services at 25% capacity or fewer than 50 people. People must also wear face coverings and practice social distancing.
The religious services covered in these new guidance include all worship services, religious study classes, religious ceremonies, religious holiday celebrations, weddings, and funerals. This also means there's no limit, as I've said, on the number of these events that could be held throughout the day.
For counties like Clark and Klickitat that are still in phase 1, there are changes too. The governor is allowing outdoor religious services with up to 100 people. There's also a mask and social distancing requirement. Still ahead, Portland will soon allow some restaurants to move their business outside. What exactly does the city's plan entail? But first, let's answer another question. Sandra asks, can coronavirus live in salt water or fresh water? We reached out to Dr. Claire Wheeler with OHSU and PSU, and she says this: there's no evidence that COVID-19 is a waterborne pathogen, and salt water is probably lethal to it. She adds, fresh water poses little to no risk of COVID-19 transmission. We're back with more questions. How prevalent is the spread of coronavirus among people who do not show symptoms? NBC News medical correspondent Dr. John Torres shares the results of a new study.
Spreading COVID with no symptoms. Today, new data out of China sheds light on what we're learning about people who get this disease but never show signs of being sick. The study looked at 78 patients who were exposed to the virus from the Wuhan seafood market or from being in close contact with someone who had COVID-19. Compared to patients who exhibited fever, cough, and other symptoms, the 33 patients who had no symptoms tended to be younger, their lungs recovered faster, and they shed the virus for 8 versus 19 days. Your immune system is set up to fight the virus, and you show outward symptoms when your immune system is really fighting hard. This study suggests asymptomatic patients have a milder response to the virus, which could mean less damage to their immune system. But while asymptomatic patients may experience less harm and transmit the virus for a shorter amount of time, it's spreading it unknowingly that puts others at severe risk for illness. That's why we continue to stress how critical it is to have the combination of staying at home, social distancing, and wearing of masks.
Restaurants and businesses all over are suffering because of the pandemic, but now the city of Portland has a plan to try to help. So what's it all about?
Well, the city of Portland isn't blind to how bad things have gotten for many businesses, some of which have had to close permanently. So starting tomorrow, restaurants and other businesses can start applying to get a permit to expand into the street. This is so customers can stay socially distant while businesses, well, get more business. You can see it illustrated here: room for street seats and socially distant dining, a place to line up for busy grocery stores or markets, and loading zones for delivery and pickup. This all in a presentation the Portland Bureau of Transportation gave at a recent city budget meeting. Restaurant owners, as well as a couple Portlanders we spoke with today, were on board with the idea. The city spokesperson says the plan doesn't apply to just specific areas. It's for businesses citywide. They say they'll have more details on the plan tomorrow. Christine Pedawanich, KGW News.
And as Oregon and Washington continue to slowly reopen, public health officials stress the importance of practicing social distancing and other safety measures. So how can the healthcare industry and business owners work together to keep the economy going while also keeping people like you safe? I asked NBC News public health analyst Dr. Erwin Redliner.
What we're missing now is two things, Galen. First is that we should have on-site testing where the barber and the people that work in the restaurant could be literally tested daily and quickly with results back immediately. That technology could be here, but it isn't. And the second thing is we're really not up to speed yet in terms of being able to do what's called contact tracing. Without those two things, I think there's been a rush to reopen. I understand the motivation, but I would say as a doctor and as a public health person that we're really rushing the gun here. You know, Portland and Oregon doesn't really have that many cases, relatively speaking, although you're having them. And there was an uptick that started a few days ago, probably due to family gatherings and whatever. It's small, but it's noticeable. And I just think if we're going to control the spread of of the disease and the fatalities associated with it, we're a little bit early to start opening businesses.
All right, here's a question that you could use the answer to. Is it safer to wear gloves when you're out running errands? Some viral social media posts argue gloves can do more harm than they do good. Gio Insignares with our Verify team looked into it for you.
The goal of the Verify team is to separate fact from fiction, and when it comes to staying safe from the coronavirus, there's a lot of misinformation to avoid. Today, we're focusing on one of the most common tools used when going out: gloves. They're usually paired with face masks as a way to get some extra protection. But Facebook posts like this are raising questions about the effectiveness of gloves, saying they're a big source for contamination. So let's verify. Is it actually safer to wear gloves when you're out running errands? Our top sources are the CDC, the Cleveland Clinic, and the American Journal of Infection Control. First off, the CDC makes it clear with its recommendation: the general public shouldn't wear gloves when running errands. Instead, wear a mask, socially distance, and wash your hands. The Cleveland Clinic, meanwhile, says gloves aren't necessarily bad, but factors like having a hole in them, putting them on or taking them off incorrectly, and a false sense of security add up to a lot more trouble than they're worth. That's why if you're still going to wear gloves, following proper procedures is most important, like taking them off the right way.
You want to use, your dirty finger and the dirty glove without touching your clean hand for the most part. And then we have clean finger hasn't touched any surface that's dirty. Underneath, we're at the clean side of the glove, and that goes into the trash can.
Even healthcare professionals who use gloves more than most don't always remove them in the most effective manner. A 2019 study in the American Journal of Infection Control showed 37% of healthcare workers still contaminated themselves after using their typical glove removal technique. So we can verify, no, it's not safer to wear gloves when you're out running errands. Research and guidance from health experts say they're a big vector for cross-contamination because most people either wear them for too long or fail to take them off properly. You're better off just washing your hands and maintaining safe practices. Don't forget, if you have any questions you want us to verify, email our team of researchers and we'll get right on it.
Well, coming up, how do Oregonians feel about working from home? But first, let's get to another question. Jackie asks, does ultraviolet light really kill COVID-19? The answer, yes. UV light is often used for killing pathogens, but we don't know how effective sunlight is on different surfaces. We'll be right back. Well, how do you feel about working from home? A new survey shows more than half of Oregonians would prefer working from home permanently once all of this is over. Now, a lot of us at KGW are working at home at least part of the time. This is my bedroom / makeshift studio. Just don't mind all the Pokemon toys on the side. I usually turn the webcam the other way on my computer so you don't have to see it. But the point is, it's home, it's comfortable, right? That new survey from Fishbowl shows some people are a little more comfortable than others, too. 42% of responders said they drink while working from home. The survey included employees from big Northwest companies, too, like Nike and Amazon. But there's a lot to balance here, too. A similar survey by Glassdoor shows about 3 in 4 people are eager to return to the office. And Fishbowl says the biggest reason is socializing. And it makes sense, right? When we spend so much of our lives at work, a lot of those people become our friends. Now, another interesting piece to all of this is the difference between women and men. 59% of women said they'd choose to work from home compared to 50% of men. Glassdoor found men are also more eager in general to get back to their workplaces. So what's got to happen now? Glassdoor says more than 3 in 4 people expect their employers to provide disinfectant and hand sanitizer, and more than half expect mask or glove requirements. And lower numbers expect workstations to be spaced out and to have mandatory temperature checks. We want to know how you feel. Hit me up on social media to let us know. In the meantime, we also know this is a big deal. Finding a job during this pandemic is so challenging, and it might be even harder for college graduates trying to start their careers. So what should college grads keep in mind as they search for a job? Here's some advice from the experts.
Please don't get discouraged. The job market right now is nothing like we've ever seen before. Rejection or having trouble getting that opportunity isn't reflective of their talents, their education, or their skills. It's reflective of the economic situation. A lot of the popular industries like marketing or tech or finance that traditionally attract new grads, they are not faring well right now. But that is okay. Eventually this will pass, but take opportunities as they come right now.
They also need to understand that you're probably going to have a lot of interviews over the internet. So you have to be virtual interview ready.
Now, when we come back, Oregon students can expect to return to their classrooms this fall. So what changes will they see at school? And before we take a quick break, we have another question here. Can my housekeeper come and clean if I leave the house? The answer, not advisable. But leaving the house when the person arrives and staying away for 3 to 4 hours is a good idea if you absolutely need to have someone come in.
The coronavirus pandemic has had some unusual consequences, including how we predict weather. Let's connect the dots. In the wake of this pandemic, airlines have cut thousands of flights as many people avoid traveling. But here is the problem. Weather forecasting models rely on those planes for information. Commercial flights aren't just ferrying passengers, they are also collecting temperature and wind data to help predict the weather. According to NPR, the National Weather Service uses more than 250 million measurements from aircraft each year. That information is then fed into weather computer models. By the end of March, that information collected from planes had been cut in half. But that doesn't mean we are flying blind. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says the change won't necessarily lead to less accurate weather forecasting because they have other ways to get this data. In fact, they are relying on information from planes used from cargo and package delivery services, weather balloons, and satellites.
I learn something new every time. And it's not just me. Kids have been distance learning for a while now. So what will learning look like this fall? Oregon Department of Education Director Colt Gill expects school buildings to open in most cases by the fall. He made the statement in an interview with the Malheur Enterprise newspaper. He told the paper some schools may have to continue distance learning if infection levels remain high in their communities. The schools that do open may need to do a blend of in-class and distance learning because of staff shortages and the need for smaller class sizes. The state will release a school reopening plan in early June. That's it for today's Q&A. We want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And this is actually our last Q&A show, but we are still committed to answering your questions in our other broadcasts. At any time, you can send us a text to the number on your screen, 503-226-5088. And be sure to check out our new show, The Good Stuff. We're going to highlight the good deeds and good people Monday through Thursday nights here at 7. Have a great night.